Well, welcome. Tonight, we're going to talk about the first, I can't even say 100 days,
No.
but the administration
75-ish?
under 100 days, and they've made quite a bit of commotion and changes. So why don't we start with introductions?
Thank you, Al. Chris Wilson, school committee member, planning board member, and town meeting member.
Ed Bertarelli, longtime member of the Republican Town Committee and State Republican Party on the Housing Authority and a library trustee.
So where do we start?
Oh.
I mean, first of all, it's not been 100 days.
No. I think you can start by going back on election night when all these people were melting down that Trump was winning and convincingly changing groups, and you had a guy on CNN who's very good for coming from that network, the statistics guy, and goes, the election was over when we looked at Orlando, which is, in Florida, and it's a Latin county, and literally Orlando flipped from being Democratic ancestrally to a tidal wave for Trump. So you knew right away that former bulwark of the party was, gone. And you heard all the people lamenting about, my God, why do we get this wrong? We need to change our philosophy and mentality. And of course they didn't. And today, yesterday, the day before, every day since he got inaugurated, they have, ranting and raving about things he's done. The fact that someone wanting to go in and get accountability in these agencies and wondering where the money's going, our money's going, and all you get is outrage. And then you find out that these vast programs and the aid program and whatever are channeling millions of dollars to some of the politicians. And Musk and Trump have had the nerve to ask, how did all these politicians become rich? How did Nancy Pelosi become rich? How did all these senators become rich? Since they didn't come from anything. I mean, there are a few senators that are probably, through businesses are very legitimately rich, but all these other people seem to become millionaires and multimillionaires from the time they stand in Washington. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out how that happens. It's insider trading influence. So, I mean, to me, what you see in the polling is the public is divided, but very much in favor of going in and seeing what the hell's going on in these agencies, like the Department of Ed,
Of course.
and whatever. And you can go through every agency. It's a tale of woe of built-in corruption, I would say, basically. So.
I definitely would have to say, yeah, Trump 2.0 is a lot different than his
Yep.
first term, right?
Yep.
He came in and he hit the ground running, right?
Yep.
He was very well prepared. So as soon as he was sworn in on Inauguration Day, it was executive order after executive order, and we've seen profound results from all those executive orders. And he's done just that. He's been the executive of the policies within the United States. I personally haven't seen him stretch his commanding power beyond what the policies that are already have in place.
Yep.
Some people don't like it because the past administrator didn't enforce those policies, but now we have a president that is. And obviously, immigration is one of the big ones right now.
But the border was closed.
Yeah, of course, it was closed.
And whose mind was it closed?
Yeah.
Biden's?
Yeah.
Wherever his mind was.
Right?
I kept hearing the border was under
efficiency
control.
side.
and
Yeah, right.
The media
Yeah.
said that,
we had, what,
Your
10
friends
million
in the
people
media.
come through?
at least.
Yeah, exactly.
There was an interesting story where I think it was when Marco Rubio was the senator from Florida. He asked, a person came in from a very respected liberal group and said, well, how is it possible that 10, 15 million people came in the course of the Biden administration? And he goes, well, no, it was actually only 10.1. And the admission was like, and the senators are all looking at one another, and the Democrats are like, oh boy. But I mean, it was like, it was just an honest expression. So,
Right.
I mean, what you had to do was literally, you had to basically tell the Border Patrol not to do their jobs. And then when people say that people are being, rounded up, these people were given a court date to show up in a court, knowing that no one was ever going to show up in court. I mean, they crossed the border, they were given whatever they were given, their Obama phone or whatever they were given, and they were given the court date. you know. And then if they went to the right states, they immediately were embraced by the social welfare state, because that's what like states like Massachusetts do, and New York and other states. That's what the blanket and the what do you call it that came in for people is amazing, including education and everything else, which is, you know, a part that everyone has a right to, but certainly not in that case. But I wanted to bring up the Department of Education. The Doge person there estimated that only 25% of the budget actually went in grants to the states for education.
Where'd the rest
Yeah.
go?
Interesting question. They traced it to foundations, to consultants, okay, consultants, paid contractors, and then you trace the money back, and it goes to suspiciously, you go back and you go far enough, and it ends up in an activist pocket somewhere. It's interesting because
And it
no
just
one can keep track of it.
And it just shows that Trump has approached being president more of it from the business sense, right?
Yes.
So he looks at something like the Department of Education and says, what is really the benefit of it? If I can split it off and have other agencies that are far better run handle monies that are moving in and out,
Yep.
and distributing those monies and handling, IEPs and grants and scholarships, things of that nature, like, he's looked at it. So it's not like he just demolished the Department of
No.
Education and said it's useless and everything within it is not being, is not fundamentally, something that we need to continue. No, he broke it up and he's splitting it off into other agencies that can do a far better job
Yeah.
at running it. And from my position on school committee, I can follow that, right? I understand that. I mean, perfect example is going through and doing the student loans, with my daughter last year. And that program, right, they decided to change that program.
Remember that was a disaster.
Yep, and upgrade the system. And for months and months and months,
Nobody
you
could
could
apply.
not access
It's a
that.
disgrace.
So it just shows that it just was very mismanaged. And it
Yeah.
needs a complete overhaul, and that
yeah.
complete overhaul is just dismantling.
And who got punished, or who got reprimanded, or who got not hired again for messing up the student loan program, which many vulnerable families relied on. I mean, obviously there were families where a loan or anything wasn't even in the picture, but those people were immune to these economic turns anyway. But here you are, where there was no accountability. So to me, what Trump is saying is appropriate the money for the Department of Ed for the states and send it to the states with no middle, third men, fourth men, fifth men sort of thing. And then, of course, you see like the USAID program, the aid program, and you see very good grants mixed in with outrageous things, gender neutrality and Burma, and you go through all of this stuff and you're reading like, what is this stuff? I mean, it's like,
But USAID,
yep,
when I hear that they're giving food to the starving,
Yep.
they're giving medicine to the sick, that seems like a pretty good thing to do.
that's what it was designed for, I believe. Yep.
That's where it started.
But
But when I saw the programs promoting alternate lifestyles and all, I sit there and say, why?
Because it's just government growing and growing, right?
Yeah,
Big
and it's also,
government,
yeah,
and
it's
it gets
also,
into the
yeah,
noise.
yeah, and it's a
noise.
certain specter of the political spectrum that's influencing these things, because obviously all those grants that we're talking about are from a ultra-liberal sort of point of view, I mean, there was one, grants to Afghanistan that were like the craziest things in the world when you consider that Biden left Afghanistan. You know how we left in it. I mean, how many people got killed who were Afghans, and 13 of our own soldiers got blown up there. Well, what was the status of women the minute the Americans left? They are nothing today. They can't even speak
Ed,
today.
I mean, I don't want to seem cold,
Well,
but the Taliban was pretty clear that their outlook on women were the same as animals, property. And all of a sudden, we're believing them when they said, if you leave, we'll change.
sure. Yeah.
I-
You want the Brooklyn Bridge too?
Well,
I've got
that's
one
my
bridge
point,
ready. for
saying,
you,
wait
so,
a minute.
yeah.
We made progress while we were there in influencing.
God love them, yeah.
But the minute we left, was it a real surprise that
No.
it would go backwards?
And another disgrace was the people that tried to side with us to help their people were left there.
Right,
and that's
and we left them just without any means
Yeah.
of getting to the United States.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I mean, when you talk about immigration, there's someone that you want to help out who was over there helping try to
Yep.
stabilize
Get
the
them right
country.
over here.
And then when we left, we basically just said you're on your own.
I guess,
So
yeah,
mean,
they actually, remember
how could you do
CBS,
that?
I think it was CBS got sued because they were slandered a private contractor who was rescuing people out of there. They said he was only doing it for money. They did that whole, it may have been CNN that was sued in Florida. They went out to this whole thing, he's only doing it for money, whatever else, and then they edited the show, and even the editor said, why do we put that in there? That's not true. The guy was doing this to get
It
people
was all
out.
altruistic, trying
Yeah,
to.
yeah, obviously it costs money to do,
But we
but,
had learned in Vietnam, we left people.
Mm,
The same way, the people who had sided with us and helped us.
yeah, but,
And when you sit there and say the border's open, to me, I know I'll get criticized for it, but those are the people that, I'm not gonna question letting them into the United States.
correct. They were helping the United States in a country of great turmoil.
no, you just
Right.
look at the crazy media in Boston, which of course, given the people we elect, it's no surprise what's going on, but remember the lady was stopped at Logan Airport, who was gonna be a professor at Brown or whatever, and a simple guy took her phone, the guy at the thing, and because they have a right to look at people's phones, and there he sees the one of the terrorists, that she's at his funeral.
Right.
And this is one of the guys, this is how old this guy was. He was one of the people behind the attack on the Marines in Lebanon when Reagan was president. That's how long ago this was. Yeah,
Well, I
crazy.
think it was put perfectly. Like having a visa and coming to the United States from another country it's a privilege,
Yeah.
right? It's not a right. It's a privilege. So you have to be able to not assimilate with people that want to attack the United States, right?
Yeah.
It's just that simple.
Yep. And the thing is, I mean, obviously, if you can get within the millions of people who came here, and you see now with ICE and the number of people who have been arrested with incredible criminal records, and then you see how the Democrats are judge shopping to get stays and court orders to stop deportations to different countries. So I guess the Democratic Party, as we see it now, is defending these type of people.
Right.
So in other words, are they saying that all immigrants are like this, or are they lumping people together? Because it's clear in every society, there's law-abiding people and good people, and there's the criminals. And usually the criminals prey on their own people, not other people. So you'd think you'd want them away, you'd want them out of here, But I guess the people in Boston who spend all their time wondering about this stuff don't want to support ICE and whatever.
But that brings back a fundamental point. Boston is a sanctuary city.
Yeah,
What does that mean?
we chuckle both at that. I have no idea.
Right.
Because if I'm a Boston resident,
Yeah.
I should have the right to vote my opinion for Boston. But then you turn around and say, we want sanctuary cities in place. Sanctuary cities want to help all sorts of immigrants, but they want other people to pay for it.
Well, of course, that's the way
course,
they
yeah.
think, yes.
Yeah.
Well,
But
no one's
I-
ever supposed to pay for it.
I have a confusion.
No, you have common
Well,
sense, I
yeah,
think, Al, not
yeah.
confusion.
Well, I think our governor has more of the confusion because we were a sanctuary state, but most recently in the last
No,
couple
we're
of
not.
weeks, we're no longer a sanctuary
She doesn't want
state.
to call it
So
that.
you want to talk confusion because I think all of a sudden the price tag and the need for an extra $450 million and
Unbelievable.
now realizing it's been $2 billion over the last few years, it has now become
Yeah.
a huge tax burden to be able to just bring individuals in with no plan. I
And
think
the- yeah.
that's the worst part.
And
Is
the- yeah.
okay, sure, you can migrate into the United States, but there needs to be a plan on how to assimilate into into society. There is no plan
imagine the
whatsoever,
people-
other than here's a place to stay, here's your food, and we're going to pay for everything.
Yeah,
and
imagine
we've
that.
just realized
But that
like
word you
this
just
isn't
said,
sustainable.
we're going to pay.
Yeah. Well.
I mean, even tiny
Taxpayers.
little Milford,
Yep.
in about 2 years, 3 years, we're going to pay a lot because of the immigration into Milford. All of a sudden, we need 300 to 600 more seats in the schools. And that's going to cause the high school to go from a 9 through 12 to an 8 through
So
12
whatever
to a
it's gonna
7
be,
through 12.
whatever it's gonna be.
Exactly. Yeah.
No one can.
Yeah, everything
Of
has
course.
a price tag.
Of course, we really don't know, I guess one thing, could you say, it's almost like, could say a work in progress, because I know, someone I know on the building committee has asked for the attendance figures for the past few years, because you're wondering what the net effect of ICE actions would be as well,
Yeah.
because
Yep.
you don't want to end up building a school that's too large, you obviously don't want to build one that's too small. And given the transience of that population, even before ICE, there was a lot of movement, as you know. A lot of kids stayed in the school part of the year, and their parents took them somewhere else, and someone else came in. So there was a lot of movement just because, hey, we've got cell phones today, we've got communication. People are much more mobile than they ever were.
Yeah, but I think to that point,
Yeah.
when January 20th, from that date forward, there was a massive amount of students that were not in school. So
Yeah.
there was some fear there, right?
Yeah.
And it just shows that, the policies and the amount of people that are here illegally, right? Plain and simple, they're here illegally, are massive, even in the town of Milford.
Yep.
Right, because we saw, 20% absenteeism.
amazing.
Well, I mean, you were on the school committee when I used to pepper Tremblay, saying we're averaging one net addition
Right,
for 40 years.
Oh, yeah.
yep,
In 1974, we graduated 200.
Yeah, yep,
And in 40 years later, we graduated 242.
yeah.
So we added an average of one student per year. And then for a couple years, we got 200 plus a year. I mean, that's a memorial school a year we're
Which,
building.
much more
yeah, which
substantial
largely
growth.
also the same housing stock, because there has been some building, but what it ended up with was vast overcrowding, and especially after COVID, before there was a very rigorous inspection of buildings, but in COVID it relaxed, and you had the overcrowding. As I said, Milford's, God bless the policemen and firemen, we've been very lucky that there's been no incident or no fire or anything where, in these conditions where people live, in a room with a lock on the door.
Exactly.
And that's more common than we think. And, we're at the town meeting, the town hall, you just throw a rock around the town hall and look at those apartments, okay?
Yep.
Very, very crowded with people.
Right.
And, and here we are pontificating at the town hall about all these sorts of things, and literally within eyesight of the town hall are a dozen buildings that are crowded with people who are, some may be here legally, some aren't. It's just, it's so strange to be thinking that, because it's you walk in a town hall and you walk out of town hall and you don't even look at the neighborhood it's in, you know what I mean? It's crazy.
But we just voted at the last town meeting to hire an outside firm to help us identify these rooming houses that,
Outside firm, again, this is another layer of bullcrap to me. It's because the people who know where the firms are the policemen and the local people. It is, you bring someone in and you're gonna go and say, oh, how many people live here? 4. It could be 84, it could be whatever. I mean, so the idea that people layer outside firms to come in, the people who know the reality on the ground are the people who live here. They know the reality situation of people. But again, it's a typical approach of, I'm not knocking the finance committee, but it's a typical approach of a layer of government that's far removed from the reality of the situation.
Right.
I'm
Well,
sorry.
it goes back to what kind of the definition of a sanctuary city
Yeah,
is,
yeah,
right? So
yeah.
if you're willing
Yeah.
to put your head in the sand and
yeah.
not look towards population and
Yeah.
the population density
Yeah.
and how many cars are
Yeah.
parked in front
Yeah.
of a house or an apartment.
How many kids are registered
right?
for
How
school?
many school, right? So I guess that kind of is the definition of a sanctuary city,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Where if you're not going to
yep.
enforce even just your general laws within your town,
Well, what do we hear
That's it.
from?
well, it's pretty obvious, because I asked the question, how do you identify these illegal rooming houses, boarding houses? And it was like, well, you got a house, and all of a sudden there's 8 cars
right?
being parked around the house.
Yep.
Or instead of 1 trash barrel, there's 4.
Right.
And there's
Very true.
kids registered in school.
And then you look and you say there's registration information that say, this house has 20 people registered, 20 kids. Well, wait a minute,
Yeah,
it's
in
a
that house.
4-bedroom.
And I think you can segue over, you could definitely say the illegal immigration population could probably easily be tracked through the IRS, right? Because it's always said, well, they're paying taxes, Well, okay,
Now
that
what?
means they have some type of tax identification number.
Yeah,
So you could, if you started to work together with ICE and immigration and the IRS, I'm sure we could
well,
identify.
I want
a
to
lot.
go a little against that because I asked someone who, as everyone has to, hires subs to do their work. And the fact is, they don't pay taxes in many cases, many cases, because the subs, the contractors or whatever pay the subs. Okay, the subs are not required. Okay,
Right, because they get a tax identification number, which makes them a small corporation
but
or LLC.
but they're not
right?
required to do anything else as far as, and they pay in cash. They're not prohibited from paying in cash. Okay,
Right.
because what they do is they give the servant a check, and they go to a check cashing place or a local, like in Milford, friendly grocery store, and they cash their paycheck for a certain amount of money. And that would explain why you see the number of people, especially in roofing contractors or whatever, driving around and the equipment they're driving around. I mean, trucks and what they call it, that cost $70,000-$80,000.
Exactly,
I mean,
yeah.
it's amazing.
So you're trying to say is that, contrary to what the Democrats say, illegals are not necessarily paying
the
their tax
vast
dollars.
majority are because of the, well, they might be if you work in a hotel or whatever, where you're getting, but if you're in the cash economy, which is very dominant,
Right.
in the immigrant community, has to be, because of what's going on, they get paid in cash, and that's untraceable,
Right.
basically. And the IRS can't even really go
But the
into
ones
that.
who are being paid on a payroll,
Yeah,
one of the arguments is they're getting ripped off because they're having Social Security taken from them, and they'll never be able to claim it.
well, that's a really, I mean, of all the arguments, that's so weak, it's almost laughable. But again, it just reminded me of something. One of the Doge people mentioned that before Biden got in, they were basically giving so many thousand Social Security numbers a month. They estimate that over 2 million Social Security numbers have been given out since Biden's been in. And how can you give an illegal a Social Security number?
Right.
But they did. And so the laws that we saw, just like when they came across the border, they used what do they call those? There's a couple of 3-letter thing, non-governmental organization or whatever.
The NGOs.
NGOs, they use them to fly people all over the country at our expense. Now, how much? A lot of that came from the USAID budget.
USAID,
So once you start investigating what this really cost and what was going on as far as totally illegal, I think the liberals in the country will have to take a breath if the media will ever cover it, because how are people paying to fly people, never mind a bus or whatever, fly people to parts unknown in the country? As I said jokingly one time, imagine the poor souls who ended up in Chicago in the winter. We must have hit the short end of the straw, because, I mean, it's a violent city and it's a not friendly city, but maybe we should go back to where we were. But you're wondering, I mean, people all along here profited. The people in the cartels who got them across the border, it's amazing. What a disaster.
Exactly.
I mean, imagine in these counties down by the border where they found people dead in the countryside trying to get over. What an effect that has on everybody.
Oh, yeah,
It's
the
amazing.
human trafficking factor.
No,
and the
unbelievable.
And the drug
See, but
trafficking
you
is
can't
huge.
blame the people.
No, we're not doing that.
The
But
immigrants themselves.
no,
I mean, yes, there's a 1% or whatever
yeah, but
that are criminals.
Al, the idea of letting them in a way with a promise that you're never going to be accountable for coming in illegally was, to me, the ultimate betrayal of them.
I think it's funny, too, to step back and how everybody's been very critical of Trump and how he has pursued immigration.
Yeah.
But when you go back a few administrations, there are hot mics saying, Obama was one of them, that, hey, if you're here illegally,
He deported.
you need to leave.
Yeah.
You need to get in line.
But Obama
and
never
come in.
deported anybody.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
I believe the figure is
Right.
3 million in
Right.
his 8 years.
I believe he deported more people than any president.
That's what they say, which is funny.
But
So how is it
I hope
that?
you mention that when your liberals
Yeah.
come in on the show.
Exactly.
Unless they don't let you. So.
Exactly. But how is it was okay
Yeah, for that.
for the way that, the way that Obama handled it, but now the way that the media is spinning the way that Trump's handling it, right? And again, Trump is going after 99.9% people that have some sort of conviction against them.
It's
right?
horrifying.
Whereas we've learned that when Obama was doing it, he was just going after individuals that were here illegally. So
So
what's different?
Yeah.
Why is it different?
Well, it shows you how many more criminals came in, too.
Exactly. 100%.
And where do these, now they're saying around Washington, D.C., MS-13 in Maryland, Virginia, and around the Capitol. Basically a real deadly gang. I mean, and, we don't even know who really runs the government in Mexico anymore. They have a president in there who spends all her time criticizing Trump, and then someone did an investigation. She got massive amount of money in her last election thing from very questionable sources.
More USAID.
No, probably the cartels, but it just shows you what's going on. I mean, but it's crazy.
But now, let's take local, Milford.
Yep.
Rumors are that ICE is descended on Milford,
Or
rounding
rumors.
up random immigrants.
So we could get picked up then? We could get picked up according to that, huh?
Randomly.
Ed, seriously, fact or fiction?
Well, they have been rounding people up, but I've witnessed a couple of
I guess
operations.
But
it's
who are
fact,
they around?
fact that ICE has been in Milford.
Yes.
I'm assuming, right,
Yeah.
that they're here based on warrants,
Yeah.
right? Because they're not going to randomly just pick Milford as a place to come to, right? They're coming here on warrants. Well, they know on
But
good
they're not
on good
randomly
authority.
picking
Exactly.
somebody and saying, you look like somebody from South America, let's go.
Exactly. Well, we know perfectly well that our chief of police has reported about gambling rings, that are happening
Yeah.
in town and other, illegal activity.
Remember
right?
the Elso
So-
supermarket in what it called behind the police station in Franklin Street? I mean, that made national news,
Right, exactly.
About
So-
the stone's throw from the police station.
Right.
They had an open air, they were selling stuff for years there. So,
Exactly.
yep.
So there's no doubt. There's
Well,
right,
my
like
The
any-
understanding
volleyball
is they
courts, the
actually
volleyball courts.
Traced
Yep.
a fellow who was being prosecuted in Brazil. He came here to Milford to set up gun trafficking, drug trafficking, and the rumor was people trafficking.
So he's an entrepreneur, basically.
But see,
according
that-
to him.
right.
Yeah.
I have some sympathy for people who come here, put their heads down.
Yeah, but let's not.
And
yeah,
work.
Yeah.
Right.
But, it's like I've said, if I invite you into my home for dinner and you start breaking my furniture, why don't I have the right to throw you out?
Yeah, but I think when the tone was set nationally by the administration and I heard it at the town meeting, when people got up and said something about the school enrollment, it's a federal issue. It's a federal issue. It's a federal issue. Our legislators, everybody, all we heard is a federal issue. When the federal issue didn't do very well by Milford, did it? They didn't treat Milford very well. And so you gotta go. I mean, you're wondering how ICE has the resources. I don't know how many people work for ICE, but obviously, we're not the only part of the country they're doing this in. But the resource to locate people, I saw one right by where Stock's Barber Shop was, by the railroad tracks, by where the trail is, by Dunkin' Donuts, just below the old St. Mary's, down from Town Hall. And the road was literally blocked off. They had the black SUVs, and they were taking people out of the building behind, or part of where we used to be Stock's Barber Shop, okay? Then there was another operation down there, Oliva's, and then apparently there's stories on the Milford Bulletin Board of a chase. There was an operation by the hospital, and apparently people fled in a high-speed chase into Hopedale, and they were pursued. So this is a very serious issue.
But you mentioned that when we work with ICE, why is that an option? If ICE is coming with warrants,
Yep.
enforcing federal law,
Well, the mayor of Boston told her police chief not to work with ICE.
yeah, but that's like me saying, Ed, I don't want to pay taxes.
Well-
I'm not
Well,
going to pay the
but
IRS.
we should ask her, that's the
I find
point.
it,
Yeah,
I find it very ironic that don't work with a federal law enforcement
Yeah.
agency if it deals with immigration, but it's okay to work with a federal law enforcement agency if it deals with, say, drug trafficking or human trafficking, things of that sort. So you get
Maybe,
to pick
yeah.
and choose which federal agency
Yep,
you want to
yep.
work
Well,
with.
that's my point.
Right.
I don't want to pay
So-
taxes.
yeah.
So I'm not going to listen to the IRS.
Right.
Well-
yeah, because we've seen it here in Milford where we have seen our police chief put out press releases in cooperation with federal authorities. We took down a drug trafficking ring
Yeah.
right here in Milford. So we've worked
Well, there was
with
this guy, this was a
federals.
very bad character.
Yeah, right.
Gun running,
Oh,
drug
yeah.
running.
Come on,
Exactly.
Al,
So-
come on now.
Why should I not applaud
The-
Robbie
yeah.
for supporting, I don't care if it's state level,
Right.
federal level,
Yeah, but-
local level, to get rid of bad people?
But imagine the danger it puts law enforcement in when you have these people here.
Right.
Because they come from a society where murder of not only the person involved, but the families of the people involved, which is very much a Mexican thing and whatever. No offense to anyone, but it's literally a sign of when you take vengeance on the family as well, so no one will ever forget.
Well, I think, and to that point, that's why you're seeing the federal agencies having
Yeah.
to mask up, right?
Yeah.
To kind of hide their identity.
Sure.
And they have to come into a situation not being fully identifiable,
Oh, yeah.
right?
They had-
and
yeah, they had.
once they kind of approach the subject, yes, that's when you're seeing their IDs come
Yeah.
out, but their faces covered. And I don't blame them for that. I know
No.
people like to kind of compare it with, other agencies from other countries that are not as well received. But
How
at the
scary.
end of the day, the ICE agents are, their fathers, their mothers, their parents. So
And it could,
we got to
people
make
could
sure
be armed
that
or
we
anything.
keep them safe.
How about going after this guy with all these guns? I mean, imagine the risk there.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, the guy was,
Yeah.
and to be a human trafficker, I mean, that's the lowest of the low, but it's a very lucrative thing if people do it, and it's a scary thing because it's been going on for years from Europe over here and whatever, but just to see the,
But I
Well,
also
it's
think
changed, because when I came back from Paris, I said there were 30 bombings in Paris the June that I was there.
yeah,
I said, one of the things that's bringing me home is I want to go back to Milford, where terrorism was the neighbor's dog doing bad things to my shrubs.
right.
But now all of a sudden, you start talking about international gun runners, and
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
scary movie.
yeah.
And you know what? You hate to say it, and I heard this on the news one time that 9/11 originated in Massachusetts. The Boston Marathon bombers, Massachusetts. So it's like we don't have a very good track record with that type of events.
Yeah.
And does that can that be
Yeah.
equated to the fact that we're considered a sanctuary state?
Yeah,
and
the
sanctuary city?
9/11
So you gotta be very
hijackers
careful.
came across the border at Jackman, Maine,
Yeah.
from Canada. That's in itself how they ever got in Canada.
Right.
And then they took a local plane. They were smart. They had it all mapped up. They took a local plane from Portland to
Right.
Boston. So
Right.
now they were inside the airport. So
Right.
technically the security, there would have been a little more robust outside. But they're obviously flying in from another airline. So
Right.
now you're moving around in a space that's in a sense protected.
But it just goes back to
Yes.
the fact that,
Yeah.
yes, we are pro-immigration the right way, but when you're just have immigrants coming in without any checks and balances, these are the situations and events that can
And
happen.
I think any
So you gotta be
reasonable,
very careful.
any
Okay.
reasonable person
Yeah.
would
In the
know that.
last 60 days, we've gone from saying the border is closed with thousands and thousands
So
of
the
people.
border is really closed now.
Right.
Well, Mayor Wu,
What did Trump do?
yeah, well, Mayor Wu said she's on record, as pathetic as it is, I mean, she's on record as talking about not to cooperate with ICE. She directed her police chief, I think I just said this a moment ago, but recently, all she could say was, and all the Boston media could talk about, innocent people caught up in the ICE raids. And then Holman, the border guy, who was a legend, I mean, he's as, whatever, I mean, his great one was lecturing the Pope, but we can get that in a minute.
was funny.
But, I mean, he goes, well, if we're in a room and we pick up 4 or 5 people and the other people are with them,
Collateral damage.
it is in a sense, but also we're going to have to prove that they're, whatever. And then people talk about their rights and whatever, and the ACLU is starting to. Do these people know the risk they're doing politically by having their whole platform defending criminals, basically? I mean, I don't understand it. It puzzles me. But I guess that's how removed they are from reality.
And I'll segue over. It shows how crazy the left is when you start thinking about how much they dislike Elon Musk, where they'll go through and they are defacing Teslas, they're burning Teslas, they're firebombing Tesla, dealerships. So, a couple of years ago, the push was let's make electric cars the thing, right? Like, electric cars were the push.
By the left.
By the
By the
left.
left.
Now all of a sudden, if you have an electric car, you must be some right-wing lunatic. Also, I laugh because my boss has a Tesla, and we've had conversations, and he does not like Trump whatsoever.
Well, probably never-
so,
yeah.
so his car could be defaced in a parking lot
I said to
just
the-
because it has a Tesla.
Yeah.
But he has no.
But Chris,
doesn't
there's a
like
lot of people
Trump.
who don't like Trump.
Yep.
I don't like him as a person,
Well, whatever.
Right.
but
But that's
a
not the
lot of
point.
people like the results he gets.
Correct. Yeah.
That's what we elected him for.
Right. Well, and I think it's funny too how everybody felt within the 70 days that he's been in office that everything was going to magically change, and we've had some stock markets gone down, right?
Oh, that's-
But that's going to happen. It happens pretty much with every president when they first start out, right? Everybody kind of gets a little bit of growing pains, and then it kind of brings itself back around. So I feel like, you may not like Trump the person, but Trump, the president, is doing some pretty
But I've
significant
always
things.
said Trump's worst enemy is his mouth.
Yeah, we
always
had,
has been.
But
It
let's
wasn't
go,
the first term.
Let's go back though. We had an FBI under Obama and Biden who spent time investigating right-to-life activists, people who spoke out at school meetings in Virginia talking about the infliction of a left-wing agenda on their students. The fact that, kids in kindergarten were exposed to there aren't two genders anymore. There are this and that and the other thing. And they went to parent meetings and spoke very highly up, and the FBI investigated them. The FBI was basically turned their whole thing around from the top to basically investigating people who are either conservative or libertarian point of view, okay? How can that be in the FBI, which is supposed to have a very different role? It isn't investigating parents
Well,
who are
wasn't
going
it the
to
FBI
meetings.
that said Catholics are extremist terrorists?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Didn't know that.
How many, yeah, so anyway, so you look at that, but you have to look at something that Chris just said. The average Tesla owner, I'm going to venture to say that maybe one of 100 ever voted for Republican in their lives. And they should put stickers on their car, I never voted for a Republican,
Right.
to protect it. And here they are with, and again, the left, it's the right that's supposed to be violent. The left are basically, with the connivance of the media and connivance of a lot of other people getting funded, gaining in sabotage. And all you're hurting is the employee of Tesla, not Musk. You're hurting the assembly lines, you're hurting whatever. I mean, this is the way they operate.
You're hurting the owner of the car, too,
Yes,
right?
well,
And the
exactly.
fact that the funniest part is the people that are doing the damage are flat out denying that they did it, but they're caught on camera because Teslas have the
Well,
that
they're other,
camera
they're other,
system,
they're other, they're
right?
other, yeah,
So that's
But
the
if you're
funniest
going
part, and they
after
still haven't
electric
figured that out.
vehicles,
yeah.
and you're an environmentalist,
Right.
why did that not come together for me?
Because they,
Especially when you start burning lithium
Because-
batteries.
no, especially with them, but the media are never gonna make that connection. As I said on every show I've been ever on, the Democrat Party has one big advantage, their monopoly of the media. And the message is crafted. Cory Booker, I mark my words, will be talking, he'll be the next salvation of everything by the time the media spin machine is all done with him. By the time MSNBC is done with him, by the time ABC is done with them, all of them. Because that's all they do is mirror the talking points. You remember when they, what do they call Vance? Weird? One senator, Democrat senator called him weird. Within an hour, every news outlet was calling him weird. It's almost like the marching orders come out of somewhere, So,
Well, Governor Walz that was a great soundbite too, when he was kind of
yeah.
enjoying the fact that Tesla stock had plummeted
Remember that?
down, only to find out that his own state, the retirement funds, had
Were
invested
invested in
not significantly, but had investments in Tesla
yeah.
stock. So
Yeah.
therefore,
Yeah.
he applauded the reduction in their stock prices, yet it only affected his own state.
Yeah.
So I mean,
Yeah.
it just shows
Yeah,
just
and then
how
yeah.
crazy and uninformed people are with just and how deliberate they are to be crazy.
Well, how do you answer the people who say Elon Musk was not elected? He shouldn't have any power.
Well, technically, he doesn't have any power.
right? He doesn't have any power,
No.
right? You know,
His
he's-
power is his mind and
Yeah.
his inventiveness. And the same people adored him before he became a Republican. That's the key issue. If Elon Musk had stayed with him, he'd still be the patron saint of the billionaire class.
Exactly.
But
Just
if you
all
look
depends
at,
on where the checks were
yeah,
going to.
if you look at the billionaire class in America today, the vast majority of them, whatever, are this Brahmin elite, as we would call it. They aren't Brahmins by what they call it, but they're the elite of the super educated and the communities they live in, you know, wherever they live, they're voting chic, out basically left, you know? So,
I like
unfortunately.
and I like what Doge is doing. They're going through
What
all
is
these
Doge,
massive.
what is Doge doing?
Well, we talked about
Yeah.
2 agencies already,
Right. Exactly.
education and,
But on a 30,000-foot view, what are they
Department
doing?
of Government Efficiency, right? They're
Yeah.
following the money, right? And they're looking at what are the tens of thousands, millions of government employees, what are they doing on a day-to-day basis, right? We all know that just government keeps growing, but it comes to a point where do we need that many government employees
yeah.
doing these specific jobs, right? We know that technology has made
and
things a lot easier and far more efficient, right? So therefore, do you need all these employees? It's kind of like in a factory and an assembly line, where, you know, it used to be
We
where
needed money
you
to
needed
automate, we
people.
automated, now
Right,
we need more people.
Right.
well, the other thing too is, I've seen a lot of the federal bureaucracy being part of it for a while, but actually, a lot of these people are contractors. They're not, because they don't want to pay, the feds don't want to pay the benefits, but the contractors have a lot longer leash than an employee would. And I know people have worked in agencies where there are a lot of contractors, and you get good, bad, and indifferent. And it's like, hey, I don't care, bye, get out, whatever. But you look at the IRS, there are, you know, everyone's already raving about, whether going to, federal employees are being fired or given buyouts. The Doge guy there said that the computers at the IRS are so dated
Right.
that, and there's so many different networks that none talks to the other. So they are paying billions of dollars for outside contractors to collect our taxes. So imagine the data breach there, because you remember when supposedly these people are talking about your sanctity of your taxes. Musk is going to be able to look at your taxes. Remember when they leaked Trump's taxes way back? How did that happen?
How did that happen?
That was a contractor who got into it and gave it to the papers, and the papers gladly took it. So it's crazy.
Yeah, you know, and I sympathize with the people that are getting laid off, no doubt about it. But in my lifetime and my 25 years experience working, I've been laid off a couple times because new ownership came in.
Yes.
They looked over the business plan and they made cuts, right? And that is just the fact of how businesses are run. Now, can you say is it government or is it business? Well, I'd have to say that government is kind of a business, or is a business, based
Yeah, but
on
they don't,
what they do and support for the
Yeah.
American people. So, again, I've been through it.
Yeah.
I understand it, but it is a part of life when, especially
Yeah.
But
when,
is this-
when the company that you work for
Yeah.
needs a
Is
course
this the
correction
natural
realignment.
pendulum that they're gonna come in? We used to call it the Beltway shuffle. When
Well,
the
I hope not.
Democrats were in power, all the people became employees, they moved inside the Beltway. When the Republicans came in, they fired them all and hired them as consultants outside the Beltway.
Yeah, but
And somehow it settled in the middle.
why should all our governmental organizations be located around Washington, D.C., in Maryland and Virginia? There's a whole mentality there, because this whole Prince George County and Montgomery County in Maryland, I'd venture to say, how many people work in private industry there? They're either state employees, federal government employees, or local employees. It's in a whole, you get a whole mentality in your thing of you're relying on the government for whatever, it's crazy. So, yep, unbelievable.
I think, the government, yeah, it is a function to help the
Yeah.
people, but it's not a function to control the people,
No.
right? It's there to support us.
I think next time we should look at a couple of specific agencies and figure out what Doge find and speak of them on the air, because we're talking them in generalities right now. But the fact is, as I said, about the IRS, about the Department of Education, about the USAID program, there was enough there of, if that's the tip of the iceberg, holy go, imagine the Defense Department,
Exactly.
what that's going to be like, because I'm sure people are trembling in there, because what did one of the admirals say, that we can't even build a ship today? The Navy, we lack welders, we lack contractors, we lack the people to build ships, and they're talking about maybe building them in South Korea.
Well, the government made our military inefficient by voting, because major weapons platforms, there was a reason they were built in 40 states. You know, that meant you had 80 senators that if you cut a program,
Yeah,
you were affecting 80 senators.
so you had lobbyists, basically, to argue against it, yeah.
Right.
You know, how many times you
You
heard,
distribute the wealth.
Yeah.
you can't cut it because,
Yeah.
well, this part of the engine's made in Massachusetts, this part's made over here.
Yeah.
There's no efficiency in that.
No, of course not. They have to be made, yeah,
But you had 5 senators.
yeah, yeah.
Right.
It used
Or
to be.
10
yeah.
senators
Yeah.
that would lobby or
Yeah.
fight against
Yeah,
closing.
it used to be many years ago when the the South was still Democrat, okay? And you had a congressman in Charleston area down there, Mendel Rivers. Well, he was chairman of one of the defense committees. Well, you can imagine the stuff that got sent down there, or another district. I mean, it was like literally, they fell all over themselves because Mendel Rivers could control the appropriations, you know, for whatever. Like even the Bath Iron Works was a solid thing, and now it's been bought out by someone, and it's a total, I don't know if it's General Dynamics or
General
whatever.
Dynamics, yeah.
But it's a totally different operation up there now, much less. But when this admiral basically said, we cannot construct ships, we just can't do it, and you're going, wait a minute, the Chinese aren't bothered by that or whatever, you know? And of course, we still haven't seen the effect of Trump's energy policies, you know, drilling and opening stuff up. That may result in good. I know a lot of fracking's coming back, a lot of other things are coming back, but that may result in, you know, we've got a liquid natural gas overflow that we could ship to Europe instead of Russia providing. I mean,
Well,
there's all
hopefully it
sorts of.
controls some energy costs here in Massachusetts.
Yeah,
'cause
yeah.
We saw that, right? The gas delivery costs for
Oh.
some families in January and February, their bills were twice of what they expected.
Oh,
right?
more.
You know, and again, back to, you know, our great governor that said, well, you know, it's it's just, you know, the tariffs and the cost of doing
Bull
business
crap.
and things like
Bull
that.
crap.
Well, but
the
isn't
fact that
some
she
of that
shut
the
down,
expectations? I mean, I get a kick out of listening to people say, well, what has Trump done since he's been elected?
Well,
And you sit there and say, energy policy, sorry to interrupt, but
Yeah.
energy policy. You don't just flick a switch.
not after 4
Everything takes
years.
time.
4
of course,
years
yeah.
of, and I
Yeah.
used to love
No.
hearing that the government is leasing land for drilling,
Yes.
but the Biden administration is holding back drilling permits.
Yeah, so why would you lease
Right.
land that you're not gonna get a permit for?
Right, exactly.
Then you'll
Yeah.
say, no one's leasing the
Yeah.
land. Okay.
Yeah.
So Maura Healey, the Department of Public Utilities, she put 2 people on there and there was 1 holdover from Baker. So in the fall, they voted to increase the Mass Save budget by $1 billion, from $4 billion to $5.
Yes.
Now, Mass Save, and I've used it, the delay in getting your refund, if you're a certain age, you might pass on before you get it. And I'm not being, literally, it's so inefficient.
Yep.
And they've complained, but again, what company is handling the rebates? Anyway, so that resulted in, the president of Eversource came out, which is either the gas or electric company, depending where you live, said that all of your rate increase, 90% of your rate increase is due to Mass Save.
Mass Save.
Well, then he was dragged back on it because they can't say that. So what happened was, I have natural gas at the house. I don't know if you do.
I do not.
No, okay. So, which was always a bargain, was very reasonable. Your price of gas, and actually the price of gas internationally has come down, okay? Your delivery charge tripled. So if your gas bill was, your gas usage was $100, say, your delivery charge would be $250, $300, which had never happened before.
Right.
It was always 100 here, 140 here. And of course, her friends in the legislature and everywhere else ban all sorts of gas pipelines into the state.
Exactly. I did
And
that.
they're busy pushing people toward electric heat. So when she got caught, what's she gonna say? Well, let's blame the utility companies. Well, they go, well, wait a minute here, here's what you told us to do. well, now they're gonna give someone back $50 $50
a
for
month,
1
yeah.
month.
Yeah.
And then it's like, boy, talk about rope-a-dope.
Yeah.
I mean, and again, the Boston media, the Boston Globe fall for it, because they're all for these alternate energy things, which make the state, I mean, imagine the idea if you wanted to relocate a business to Massachusetts, and you're looking at an energy bill like that, and you're down in Missouri or you're down in the South, and your energy bill is a fraction of it. Why would you possibly be up
Would you
here?
want to come up here?
It's crazy.
Exactly.
Tariffs.
Yes.
Any ideas?
No.
Does anybody have any ideas?
Well, I
So
guess they're
it's-
gonna be announced soon. I wish that the media, and I wish Trump had done a list of all the current tariffs that other countries have against us, so we could see them. Because right now, the media have given the impression that the big bad Trump administration is doing something that hasn't been done for years, when
Exactly.
in reality, Europe has had some pretty stiff tariffs against our own goods. Well, let's see them, so that, then, as you would say, hey, let's play fair. Once you say, let's play fair, then you might get an honest discussion.
Well, see, that's why, like, when we want to ship a computer to China, you can't. There's no tariff. There's just, you cannot
No
ship
computers.
a computer to China. Now, if it's part of an instrument, it's a controller, you can get a.
But everyone
waiver.
knows that, Al, who does business with China? It's is it an unwritten rule, or is it a rule?
No, it's a rule.
Okay.
It's plain and simple. You won't get it through customs. So I sit there and say, well, wait a minute. Why don't we admit that in that aspect, China's smarter than us? We'll adopt their rules.
Yeah.
No computers made in China can come to America.
I think that would be, if you did a hard line on that, then we'd have a problem pretty quickly. But I understand. From a business side of it, that's why I think that, again, Trump's approaching it with a business sense, where
Yes.
he's trying to spearhead manufacturing here in the United States. How do you do that? By taking and saying, all right, there's going to be a tariff on our products going out, because we're already paying for the tariffs of the products coming in, right? The Canadian aluminum,
Yeah,
and,
dairy products, everything. Yep,
steel,
yep.
things of that
Wood.
nature. So wood. So, right. So why do we have to pay the tariffs on their products, when they're not paying a tariff on
Yeah.
our products? So again, it's either going to be a two-way street with all tariffs, or a two-way street with no tariffs, or
Yeah.
it spearheads us just to begin our own manufacturing,
good
so we
point.
don't have to worry
How
about
do you
tariffs.
respond to Trump's comment that I don't care if prices go up as long as people buy more American goods?
I
Well,
know,
again, but
yeah.
that's one, again,
Yeah.
you could take any off-the-cuff remark. I mean, you could take his remarks about Canada, about Greenland, about a whole lot of things, but what they are gambits. He's into making a gambit, and the humorless liberal intelligentsia, whatever you want to call it, who hate government, who hate industry. I mean, the people who work in the government, I mean, except in the states where they're clustered, what does the government bring to the economy? What does it bring, unlike a business? What does it bring? It brings, in the area around the Beltway, it brings a lot of money and wealth, because the salaries are up there. I mean, you have to look at what's going on, but you look at, the whole gambit with Canada, and then the guy up in Canada coming back. The reality is, Canada's our largest trading partner. It's amazing that people don't think of that, but I know the government of Ontario said that Ontario's claiming that province alone is our third largest trading partner. Well, figure what has to transport back and forth. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, I think, going back, is there going to be a little bit of a pinch because of the tariffs? I think so. I think there's going to be some consumers, that are going to be unhappy with it overall.
How about
But you got to look long term, right?
Well,
Are
yeah.
we looking for now, or are we looking long term?
Were these people upset over the food prices that have gone up in 4 years under Biden, where people can't even put food on the table? I haven't heard a peep from the left on that. We heard it from our point of view.
Yeah.
But when you go to a supermarket and buy groceries, I didn't hear them complaining about it at all. Who are they going to blame now? Trump?
Yes.
Yes.
I guess so.
Food.
It's
Okay,
fuel.
yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was a trick
Yeah,
question.
they always
That was a
plan.
trick
Yeah.
question.
He hasn't fixed it since he's been in office.
Yeah, eggs have still in 60, 70 days. They still haven't
haven't
crashed down or whatever.
Yeah, and disregard the avian flu and
Ah,
these
of
things.
course.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, he's done some magic wands.
It's crazy.
On certain
It's crazy.
aspects
It's crazy.
of his presidency in the first 70 days.
How
but
do you
not
explain
everything?
the border crossings going down?
To non-existent.
to negligible.
It's just enforcing the rules and the policy and the law.
And also a head of
Right.
state who is,
Right.
anyone
Yeah.
with a brain is gonna go, oh, I'm gonna pay a cartel to smuggle me over the border when I'm gonna be sent back
Sent
over.
back,
So then I have to pay them again to come over?
Right.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
like crazy.
And I think he shut it down altogether from the standpoint, remember, in his first presidency, he was criticized for allowing
Yeah.
individuals to come over, but putting them in basically kind of an encampment for processing.
just like
But
Obama
he
did.
was, but he was like, oh no, these are jails, these are,
Cages,
concentration
cages.
camps type thing.
Yeah, but the
And it's like,
cages,
come
he
on,
got
no.
credit for.
Right.
Negative credit, but he got credit for. But they were from,
Obama.
right.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So hey, so the policy
Yeah, but
is,
again, you can't beat the
the
media.
policy is just the border's closed. You stay out. Do it the proper way of
It
filling
just
out
shows you,
paperwork
it
and coming
shows you
into-
what willpower, when the United States expresses its will in the world, it shows what it does. I mean, you just think as simple as something, you watch any of these, and I put them on once in a while, they have the voice shows, the voice programs, the competitions.
Yes.
I mean, they'll have the Voice Germany, the Voice Norway, whatever. The influence of American music is so dominant, American culture, as you know, is so dominant in Europe. People resent it, but it's saturated to all areas because the culture, jazz, our rock stars, our
Well,
jazz, whatever,
Ed,
it's everywhere.
In '82, when we were living in France,
Yep.
the French government put in a bureau to protect the French nationality
Yes.
because all the TV shows, Dallas, Dynasty, they're all American shows.
Yeah, yeah.
shows. Yep.
And they literally took them off the air.
I'd like to hear Dynasty of Dallas in French. That would be interesting. to
Well,
hear.
that was always the
Yeah,
problem, was
yeah.
American actors went over to France,
Yeah.
and the voices were different.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
French wouldn't accept them. But it was funny because I can't remember, it was 6 months or 9 months, they did away with all the American soap operas on TV,
Uh-oh.
Fine. Yep.
and nobody watched TV.
Just to
They
preserve.
replaced them with French talk
Oh,
shows,
God.
and they had to bring them back. They
Yeah,
had a whole bureau
European television is
of
pretty boring.
renaming
Yeah.
words, like jumbo jet. Instead of les jumbo jet, it was les grosses potiers. Because of the influence.
Oh, it's amazing. No, it just shows you. But no, it's just so everywhere. It's everywhere, and it's not even something you want to brag about, because this is something you brag about. But it's just everywhere,
Right.
especially in the younger generation, because music's the common language in the world, and American music. I mean, just think jazz. Jazz is a uniquely American thing. Everything. I mean, just think of. And here's a country where we talk about it, the billionaire music industry people, the billionaire women and men who made their
Well, but
billions.
see, that's one of my pet peeves. You're a good actor. I enjoy watching you on the
Mm-hmm.
screen. What makes you think that you can affect my political views?
Yeah. Well, I think they learned this past election cycle that
It doesn't work.
they're better off just being on the big screen and not as a
We're
political
running out
activist.
of time, unfortunately, but
Okay.
question. Yesterday was Election Day here in Milford.
Yep,
What do you think the percentage of turnout was?
it was under 1,000.
Yeah, I'd say around
1,000 out of
Yeah,
16,000?
it was 960 or something,
maybe we hit 4.7%.
of 18,000.
Yeah. So, but again,
it's
it was just
5%.
uncontested races.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
But still, not to bother voting.
I know it's
It just
unfortunate.
it kills me when it was 10%. I was
It
embarrassed.
was literally 10 minutes.
We're
of
not
your day.
alone in the towns either. We're not alone in
Yeah.
Massachusetts.
No, it's not a Milford
common,
thing.
It's a common
But I-
thing
Yeah,
now.
and I think it's a longer conversation of why are people not running.
And then when you get another generation of people who don't even want to run, then you have another issue.
Exactly.
So,
Well-
but thanks, Al, for having us.
As always, thank you to our 6 loyal viewers. But seriously, the voting thing is really something that should weigh on everybody's mind. Because you can't complain about the people running the town. And Milford's
Oh,
been
sure you can.
fortunate that for what we offer, the average bill in Milford
Okay.
for property tax
Ah,
is
come on, you finance
$6,500.
committee, you're biased over here.
I am biased.
Come
but
on.
when I look
It's
and
still
I say,
too much.
look around and say,
Yeah,
who else offers the
The
same?
services we get, yes.
So please consider voting. And as always, may tomorrow be a better night than tonight. May God bless. Thank you for joining us.